the dark woods of Mississippi, parents still warn their children about two sisters, May and Elsie Holloway. Some say they were cursed, others believe they were pure evil. But one thing everyone agrees on: if you hear laughter in those woods at night, you should run. Because once the Holloway twins find you, you'll never escape their gaze. If you enjoy dark legends like this, don't forget to subscribe, like and share to hear more terrifying stories. The legend of the Holloway twins begins in the sweltering summer of 1958, deep in the forgotten woods of rural Mississippi. Back then, the land was wild, overgrown, and unforgiving. People in the nearby towns avoided those woods, not only because of the snakes, wild dogs, and swampy bogs, but because of something else. Something darker. At the heart of those woods stood a small, weather-worn cabin. Its wood was gray and splintered, its windows always draped with heavy curtains, shutting out the world. This was the home of the Holloway family. Inside that cabin lived the twins, May and Elsie Holloway. They were born only minutes apart, and from their first breath, it seemed as if fate had woven them together with an invisible thread. The girls were identical in every way: long, dark hair, pale skin, and piercing eyes that seemed to look right through you. People used to say you could stand before them and feel as though they knew your secrets without you speaking a word. Their parents, poor and withdrawn, rarely ventured into town. When they did, they brought the girls with them. But the sight of May and Elsie always unsettled the townsfolk. The twins never smiled, never waved, never spoke unless it was to each other. And when they did speak, it was in whispers, their voices strangely in sync as though rehearsed. Rumors began to grow. Some said the girls were born under a blood moon. Others whispered that their mother had dabbled in witchcraft and that the curse had passed down to her daughters. People swore that animals grew restless around the girls. Dogs would bark and snarl, chickens stopped laying eggs when the twins passed by, and horses refused to move if the sisters stood too close. Children in town avoided them, crossing the street whenever the Holloway family appeared. But curiosity is dangerous, especially among children, and there were always a few who dared to follow the girls into the woods, hoping to prove the stories wrong. Those who returned never spoke of what they saw, and those who didn't return became the first whispers of something terrible. The strangest thing, though, was the way May and Elsie seemed to know things they shouldn't. They could repeat conversations they were never present for. They could predict storms before a single cloud formed in the sky, and more than once, neighbors claimed to hear two young voices singing late at night, soft lullabies drifting out of the Holloway cabin, even when the girls' parents swore the children were asleep. By the end of that summer, one thing was certain: May and Elsie Holloway were not like other children. And the people of Mississippi were beginning to realize the twins were not to be trusted. As summer gave way to autumn in 1958, the legend of the Holloway twins began to take root in the small Mississippi town nearest the woods. People rarely spoke their names aloud, but when they did, it was always in whispers, as though saying May and Elsie too loudly might summon them from the trees. The rumors grew faster than the weeds in the old churchyard. Some said the sisters were gifted with a second sight. Others believed they were cursed children, born as a punishment for sins long forgotten. What unsettled people the most wasn't just the way the girls appeared. It was the way they behaved. The twins were inseparable, always seen hand in hand, moving almost as a single body. If May tilted her head, Elsie did the same. If Elsie whispered something under her breath, May's lips would move too, silently echoing her sister. There were moments when people swore the girls' voices overlapped, two tones speaking at once, even though only one of them had opened her mouth. It didn't take long for the townsfolk to decide. Something unnatural bound the Holloway sisters together. Stranger still were the events that happened whenever the girls were near. One woman claimed her baby cried uncontrollably the moment the twins walked past her porch, and only stopped after they were gone. A farmer swore that he saw the sisters standing at the edge of his field at dusk, and when he turned his eyes back to his crops, every stalk of corn had wilted as if overnight. Of course, no one could prove anything. But fear doesn't need proof, it only needs a story. The stories spread. Some said that at night candles flickered in the Holloway cabin, shadows moving on the walls in strange ritualistic patterns. Others whispered about soft chanting in the distance, carried on the wind when the moon was full. A few brave or foolish souls claimed they had seen the girls wandering barefoot in the woods long after midnight, their pale nightgowns glowing faintly in the darkness. Children in town dared each other to call out to the Holloway twins, to step onto their land or worse, to knock on their cabin door. But none were ever brave enough to try, not after the first boy who followed the girls home claimed he heard them both humming the same song from different rooms of the cabin. It wasn't long before people began calling the twins witches. Even the local pastor warned his congregation to stay away from the Holloway property, saying the devil worked best in pairs. By the time the leaves began to fall, the town was divided, half too terrified to speak of the Holloways, and the other half secretly fascinated, eager for another strange tale to confirm what they already believed. But one truth united them all. The Holloway twins weren't just odd little girls. They were something far more dangerous. And the woods around their cabin, those trees no longer belonged to the town. They belonged to May and Elsie. By late autumn of 1958, the Holloway twins were no longer just a strange curiosity. They were a source of fear. And then, something happened that turned whispers into panic. People began to disappear. The first was a hunter named Charles Dempsey. He was a strong man, the kind who knew the woods better than anyone. One evening he told his wife he was going out to track deer. He never came home. His hunting dog returned the next morning, but its fur was matted with mud, its eyes wide, and it refused to go near the Holloway property. A search party combed the forest for days. They found Dempsey's rifle propped against a tree, but no sign of his body. What they did find were 2 sets of small footprints pressed into the damp earth, leading in the direction of the Holloway cabin. At first, people tried to dismiss it as coincidence. But then it happened again. A young boy named Samuel Turner was walking home from a fishing trip at dusk. His tackle box was discovered along the dirt road, one handle broken, as if dropped suddenly in fright. His fishing pole was snapped clean in half, lying in the grass. No trace of Samuel was ever found. The sheriff questioned the Holloway family, but May and Elsie were calm. Too calm. They sat side by side at their kitchen table, pale hands folded neatly, eyes fixed on him as if studying every movement he made. When he asked if they had seen Samuel, both girls smiled in unison. Neither spoke. Their silence was unnerving. It was as if they were playing a game only they understood. Rumors spread faster than wildfire. People whispered that the twins lured Samuel into the woods with their strange voices, that they sang lullabies sweet enough to draw a child away from safety. Others swore the girls were seen standing at the riverbank that same night, their reflections in the water moving differently from their bodies. Within weeks, the town was paralyzed by fear. Parents kept their children inside after dark. Farmers no longer worked their fields near the tree line. No one dared walk alone at night, not even grown men. And through it all, the Holloway twins carried on as if nothing had changed. Their pale faces unreadable, their dark eyes full of secrets. One neighbor swore he saw them playing in the dirt behind their cabin, giggling softly as they buried something with their small hands. When he returned the next morning to investigate, the ground was perfectly smooth, as if nothing had ever been there. By the end of November, the disappearances had become too many to ignore. Some townsfolk demanded the Holloways be run out. Others begged the sheriff to arrest the twins, curse or no curse. But nothing was done, and so the legend of the Holloway twins deepened. For now, the people weren't just afraid of what the girls might be. They were terrified of what the girls might do next. By the winter of 1958, fear of the Holloway twins had reached its breaking point. Families whispered about leaving town. Fathers kept loaded rifles by their doors, and mothers warned their children never to even look toward the woods. The disappearances had shaken the community, but no one dared confront the Holloway family directly. The truth was simple. Everyone feared May and Elsie more than they feared the law, or even God. Then one bitterly cold night, it happened. The fire. A column of smoke was first spotted by a farmer just after midnight. It rose above the pines, thick and black, blotting out the stars. Within the hour, neighbors were running toward the source, carrying buckets, blankets, anything they could to help. When they arrived, they found the Holloway cabin engulfed in flames. The fire burned unnaturally hot, roaring like a beast, as if it had been waiting to consume the house all along. The onlookers swore the flames seemed to twist and curl into shapes, faces in the smoke, figures writhing in the firelight. Some tried to help. They rushed forward, but the heat was unbearable. The walls collapsed inward, sparks scattering into the night sky. All anyone could do was watch as the Holloway home was reduced to ash. When the flames finally died, the sheriff and a few men crept onto the smoldering remains. They expected to find bodies, the parents, the twins, but there was nothing. No charred bones, no signs of anyone at all. The only things left standing were two dolls, sitting side by side on the blackened floorboards. Their porcelain faces were cracked from the heat, but their glass eyes still gleamed in the faint moonlight. The sight chilled the men to their core. Some townsfolk believed the girls had perished in the fire, trapped inside by the very evil that had haunted them. But others insisted the truth was far stranger. Witnesses swore they saw two small figures at the tree line as the cabin burned, girls standing hand in hand, their white nightgowns glowing faintly in the smoke before vanishing into the forest. And then there were the sounds. Several neighbors claimed they heard laughter, two young voices drifting through the crackle of burning wood. High, melodic and disturbingly calm, as though the twins were watching their own home burn. And enjoying it. By dawn, the Holloway cabin was nothing but ruins. The sheriff tried to convince people that the twins had died in the blaze, but few believed him. No remains, no proof, no answers. Only questions and more fear. From that night on, the Holloway land was abandoned. No one rebuilt there, no one hunted near it, and no one dared linger after dark. The trees grew thick around the ashes, swallowing what was left of the cabin, until the land itself seemed to hide the Holloway name. But the legend didn't die in those flames. It only grew stronger, because if the Holloway twins truly survived that night, they were still out there, somewhere in the woods, watching, waiting. The fire may have destroyed the Holloway cabin in the winter of 1958, but it did not erase the Holloway twins from Mississippi's memory. In fact, it only made their legend stronger. With no bodies ever recovered, the question haunted everyone. Had May and Elsie really died in the fire? Or had they escaped into the woods? In the months that followed, strange reports began to surface. Campers claimed they heard giggling in the distance, two voices, always in perfect harmony. Hunters swore they saw movement between the trees, two slim figures darting from shadow to shadow, never stepping into the light. Some said they even found tiny handprints in the mud, far too small to belong to grown women, pressed deep into the earth miles away from the ruins of the Holloway cabin. Then came the sightings. On foggy nights, drivers passing along the old dirt road reported seeing two girls standing at the edge of the forest. They never spoke, never moved, just stood hand in hand watching the cars go by. Those brave or foolish enough to stop and look closer found nothing. The roadside would be empty, as though no one had been there at all. The stories grew darker. A group of teenagers once swore they heard lullabies in the woods, soft and sweet, just before one of them vanished for nearly an hour. When he returned, he was pale, shaking, and unable to explain where he had been. All he would say was that he heard them whispering his name. Over time, the legend of the Holloway twins spread far beyond Mississippi. Travelers, ghost hunters, and thrill seekers came to the region, hoping to glimpse the infamous sisters. Some left with only campfire stories. Others claimed to feel a presence in the woods, two shadows moving in unison, watching from the darkness. Even today, locals warn against wandering too deep into the forest near where the Holloway cabin once stood. The land is overgrown, the ruins hidden, but the feeling remains. A heavy silence settles there, the kind that makes the hair on your arms rise. Birds don't sing in that part of the woods. Animals avoid it entirely, and sometimes when the night is quiet, people say you can still hear them. Two girls laughing softly as though playing a game, or singing a lullaby no mother ever taught. The Holloway twins may have been born in 1958, but their presence has never left Mississippi. Whether they were cursed, whether they were witches, or whether they were something far more terrifying, one truth endures. If you hear laughter behind you in those woods, don't look back, because once the Holloway twins find you, you will never leave their forest alive. If you enjoyed this terrifying legend, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share to support the channel and hear more haunting stories. The Holloway twins may be gone, or maybe they never left, but their story lingers, passed from one generation to the next, a reminder that some places in the world hold on to their ghosts. And in the dark woods of Mississippi, those ghosts might just be waiting for you.